Okay, welcome to Wayne's World Garage. Today we're going to finish up splitting the firewood for the season. We've taken 4 oak trees down Monday, and unfortunately the oaks around here have this disease called a Hypoxylon Canker. Don't ask me how to spell that. But what that means is the trees die very quickly, not a whole lot you can do about it. So what we're doing is when they die, we take them down and we make firewood out of them. So here's what we've got right now. We've got bunches of stacks of wood that look like this, and you may notice that we keep this wood off the ground. So we put some 4x4s in the ground and some 2x8s and 2x6s to keep them stacked on, to keep them off the ground, to keep the water out of them. When they're finished stacking, we usually, of course, put a tarp on them to keep them dry, and it seems to work out pretty well. And we also, meaning Paula, puts a little label on them to see exactly where we got the wood from and how old it is. So we've got this stack of wood here, we got this one done, we've got another one done. We've got enough firewood for the season for sure. So, but I hate to leave the wood into the woods because all it's going to do is rot out a little bit more. So what ends up happening is when it sits for too long, especially the oak, it'll get bad. The oak will go bad, and when it goes bad, what happens is that the outer bark part starts rotting out. So the tree I'm splitting up now, there's just 5 or 6 wheels left of it. There's a little bit of rot on the outside of it. So I'll sort that out. If it's not good, I'll just throw it in a burn pile to burn in a fire pit outside or something like that. So just as a reminder, this is the log splitter. The log splitter that I built probably 15 years ago now. It's not very complicated, but it does have 3 hydraulic cylinders on it. So one of them goes to this wedge, which thankfully I got from the guys at Timberwolf. They were kind enough to sell it to me. And it has a log lift, because when you're a geezer and you're old and you can't lift up 100 pounds of logs anymore, the log lift comes in very handy, which you will soon see. Powered by this Honda motor, which is a Honda, so it like starts when it's supposed to. GX390, I think it's like 13 horsepower. Works well. It's a little bit noisy. The hydraulics on this are a little bit sophisticated because it has automatic return. So to go forward, you push these 2 forward. When it reaches 2,500 pounds of pressure at the end, it automatically returns. And this is for the log lift, and this is for the little wedge to make her go up and down. So with any luck, we'll get her started and we'll finish chopping this stuff up today. All right, let's see if she starts like a Honda. Power on, choke on. Started. So this goes to show this is not entirely scripted. And sometimes once you split these big wheels, part of the log falls off and I have to go around and pick it up. Oh well. The funny thing is, this is the only wheel it happened to today. My bad. I guess it was the first one and I'm out of practice. So what I'm doing, and I have the option and the prerogative to be a little bit picky here, is I'm splitting this log with these wheels and taking just the heartwood. So just the red part of the wood. All the bark and all the stuff on the outside, which is just a little bit rotten, I just toss out, and that'll go to another burn pile. So normally what I do when I split the log and I keep the entire log is I'll put it right into the wagon, because the loading deck or the offloading deck is at the same height as the wagon, and that works out really well. In this case, I'll dump it all on the ground and then I'll sort it out later. So I've gotten feedback from a few guys saying, yeah, we like the longer videos. Go ahead and make them as long as you want, at least half an hour. And if they're too long, break them up into 2 different parts, which is what I'm doing. So I appreciate the feedback. Please give me some more. If you like long videos or short videos, I'm trying to break the YouTube code and see what people want to watch. Frankly, for me to watch somebody splitting firewood or cutting something with a chainsaw puts me to sleep. But if you like watching this, let me know and I'll do more of it. So obviously, this goes helper with 1 extra helper. And if you've got a good helper, they can keep a log or a wheel always on a log lift, ready to go. And at the same time, they can stack the wood either in the firewood pile or in the wagon. Frankly, I like working in a driveway like this or on a road because it's better for balance, easier to clean things up, and just a lot easier place for me to work. The goal here is to keep the hydraulic cylinder with its splitter always moving backwards or forwards, and that's exactly what I tell my helper. A good helper, we can split almost a cord of firewood in 1 hour. It's phenomenal, and it just goes very, very quickly. But the helper's got to be hustling full time. So when I built this log splitter, I had the option of making it a vertical splitter or a horizontal splitter. And I spoke to a couple people that sell log splitter parts, and I learned a couple of lessons from that. The lesson was, how many people have cut off their fingers with a horizontal log splitter? How many people have cut their fingers with a vertical log splitter? What do you always do when you're splitting firewood? I know you shouldn't do it, but your hand goes on the log. And if you see my hand, it's always on the log. Well, I've been using this thing for well over 10 years, probably close to 15, and I've never, whacked my fingers off. A vertical log splitter, though, your hand's on top of the log where the wedge comes down. The opportunity to cut a finger off is much higher. So, when I decided to build this, I went with a horizontal log splitter and a log lift. Additionally, I get to work at waist height now, and that's part of the design of this, is making it up high enough so you're not on your hands and knees. A lot of the log splitters you get from the big box stores, which hold 1 gallon of hydraulic fluid, which is crazy. You've got to work on your hands and knees the whole time. And when you're my age, geezerdom, that gets a little bit tedious and painful on the back. So to answer your question, who cares if my log splitter only has a 1 gallon tank? You care, and here's why. Hydraulic fluid, when it's working, gets warm and gets hot. And that is a bad thing for anything, to have the oil getting too hot. The general rule of thumb for anybody that uses or builds hydraulic equipment is you need 1 gallon in the reservoir for every gallon per minute that the pump will produce. This is a 23 gallon per minute pump, and I've got about a 20 some odd gallon tank. The 23 gallons is under low pressure. High pressure, it cuts down to like half that, maybe 6 or 7 gallons a minute. Regardless, after I've been running this for half an hour, the oil temperature still, even with a 20 gallon tank, gets above 140 degrees. So your next question is, how much does it cost to build this thing? That's a good question. Well, you can go on the interweb and figure out a lot of it, okay? Because lots of places sell 20-gallon hydraulic tanks. Steel is an issue. When I built this, steel cost was probably under $200. There's a large I-beam in the center of it. It's an 8-inch I-beam. Not terribly expensive, and steel you can always get cheaply if you know where to look and go to scrap yards. Today, though, if you're to buy new steel, this probably has well over $1,000, probably $1,500 worth of steel if you had to buy it new. So that's kind of expensive today. Hydraulic pump, you can just buy a hydraulic pump. Lots of places sell hydraulic pumps, and the same with the valves. The valves are pretty commonly available, but they do add up. The motor, the motor's an $800 motor today. So certainly the motor, the pump, and all that stuff, you're looking at $1,500. The big kicker here today, and even when I built this thing 15 years ago, is the hydraulic hoses. And that was a big surprise to me. I had no clue. So I took it to a local hydraulic shop, not Cauliflower, although they're great people and they're local. But there's a hydraulic shop which will build custom fittings for you. And I brought the whole lock splitter there on my trailer. 3 hours later, okay, they had hydraulic hoses fit for me. The hoses all have to be indexed. Okay, what that means is hydraulic hoses under pressure, you can't twist very well. So you have to set them up the way they're going to be used on the application, and then have them hydraulically crimped in their crimping thing. So they crimped all that stuff for me. You got big hoses, little hoses. Obviously you can see right facing us the suction hose. That's a big hose. These fittings, these are all JIC type fittings. That's a good language. It's a good word a lot of you hydraulic guys probably know all about. I don't know a whole lot about them. They are expensive. So when I built this, bottom line is the fittings and the hoses was just about $1,000, and that kind of caught me off guard. But it runs and it works great, and it's better than anything you can buy, unless you buy some of the commercial Timberwolves or something like that. So that brings up another point, gasoline. It is a nightmare. And I hope you guys are all fans of Jay Leno Garage. Jay Leno's just a great guy. He's got a great show. He's in the same boat I am. We hate corn gas. And thank you to somebody in Congress, the U.S. government, they have imposed on us corn gas, i.e. gasoline which contains 10% ethanol. It is the worst thing in the world. The ethanol turns to jello after several months. It has 2 states after a while, and it will attract water. It's called hydroscopic, which is the worst thing you want for something like this. So even if you drain the gas out of it, the corn gas or alcohol gas, okay, what happens is residual alcohol in there. It collects water, and it will corrode the aluminum parts in your carburetor and engines. So Wayno here is not a fan of corn gas. Well, what are you going to do? You've got a couple of options. You can buy race gas. That's $10 a gallon, and it probably works very well. But being a cheapskate, I don't want to do that. You can, in some counties, buy gas which doesn't contain ethanol in it. In our county, in this part of Maryland, we don't have that option. But we do have another option, and I use avgas. It's high octane, a little bit of lead, but there's no corn and gas in it, no alcohol. It will last years. I've had aviation gas in motors for several years, and it never goes bad. This motor will sit for 6 months, a year. It'll start on the first pull. So, big advocate for gasoline without alcohol in it. It works great. And if you want your engines to run and get out of the carburetor rebuilding business, my recommendation is to start getting rid of your corn gas and start using alcohol-free gas. When I first started using gasoline, it wasn't meant to have alcohol in it. Okay, well, there's light work of that job. I didn't have a whole lot of wheels left. Now, some of you may be wondering, and I'm sure you've already started to ask it, man, did this guy take this short bus to school? Why hasn't he put it on a firewood stack? Well, the reason being is there's a lot of rot in this wood, and it makes a huge mess from the debris, and I don't want all this garbage to have to pick it up where we stack our firewood. So you can see I've got piles of it. It's really the slab wood, or the outside part of it. And since this tree had Hypoxylon Canker, whatever, there's a lot of rot towards the outer inch or two of it. So I just split it off since I've got the time to do it. But what is left is beautiful, beautiful firewood. This is the heartwood, really. It's nice red oak, as you can see. It will stack nicely, and when it dries, it will burn like crazy. And there's no bark on it either. And the bark's really what causes issues with it rotting out. Additionally, let me talk a little bit more about the log splitter. Because I built this thing, I don't know, 10 or 15 years ago. A couple things, if you go to buy one, or if you want to build one, is this has an automatic return. And you saw that working. The automatic return is nice. This, pushing both forward, when it reaches pressure, goes back. And this is a log lift. This is for the 4-way wedge. Why did I build a horizontal log splitter instead of a vertical log splitter? Good question. Go on the internet, go on the interweb and start checking things out. The advice I had from people I bought some parts from is nobody's chopped their fingers off with a horizontal log splitter for the most part. And the reason being is when you're splitting wood, you see what I'm doing. You put your hand here on the log, and you're smart enough to move it out of the way, certainly, before it gets to the end. With a vertical log splitter, it's here, it's coming down, you're not paying attention. The first thing it hits could be your fingers, and you say, well, that's probably a bad idea. So think hard before you build a vertical log splitter. Additionally, this is pretty easy on a smooth surface. I can roll the logs up to it, and it's easy to load up. Let's look at hydraulic fluid. Okay, this holds over 20 gallons of fluid. The rule of thumb is you're supposed to do 1 gallon of hydraulic fluid per gallon per minute of the pump. It's a 20 some odd gallon a minute pump, 22 or 23 under low pressure. So we got a 20 gallon tank. The fluid gets hot. It's probably 140 degrees in there, 150 degrees in there right now. So it does work. The larger hydraulic tank means you've got a little bit better log splitter if you go to buy one. Be a little bit skeptical when you go to Home Depot or some of the other big box stores and you buy a $1,000 log splitter and it says 27 tons on it and it's got 1 gallon of hydraulic fluid. That doesn't make sense. So that's it for today. Now load this stuff up. Thanks. Thanks for watching another episode of Wayne's World Garage. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already subscribed, please click on the subscribe. And most importantly, give me some feedback. I'm trying to crack the YouTube code and get lots of subscribers. I'd like to make something go viral here. What do you guys want to see? Thanks again and have a good day.